Hi everyone, thanks so much for jumping online to join our webinar today. We'll be getting started in about 2 minutes time, so just sit tight and we'll get started in a couple of minutes. Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Stacey Keating, Director of Student Recruitment, Kaplan International Pathways Australia. Thank you so much for joining us today for part 5 of our 5-part series focused on the University of Adelaide's Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences and the Faculty of Science. Today's session is one that we've been looking forward to for quite some time. We're going to be hearing from the faculty in regards to some new programs that they have. Very excited to learn more about the new Applied Data Analytics program in the undergraduate space. We'll be hearing about the Bachelor of Science and also the new Master of Science as well. We have touched on some areas of the Master of Science in previous sessions, but looking forward to hearing more about that today. Thank you all for taking the time to join us. We're really grateful for you to take time out of your day to join another webinar. You guys have been troopers joining our series. I know you've got so many webinars to join from lots of different institutions in Australia, but also around the world. So we're so grateful that you've chosen to join us. Our registrations today represent 30 different nationalities, which really speaks to the diversity of our student recruitment efforts here for the University of Adelaide College. And it's so great to see that in real life as well. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. To present to us today, I'd like to welcome back Ari Trauke, the Student Recruitment Manager from the Faculty of Science. Thanks for joining us again, Ari. Was this your number 4 session with us, I think?
Yeah, I think so. It's great to be back. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Ari. And joined today as well by Professor Amanda Abel, Deputy Dean of Learning and Teaching from the Faculty of Science at the University of Adelaide. Thanks so much for joining us, Amanda.
Thanks, Stacey.
Thanks. So today's session is going to be a presentation led by Ari and Amanda. They'll be working through some slides very similar in format to our previous sessions. We'll conclude that with a Q&A at the end. So once we get to that Q&A, I do ask that you just pop your questions into the question and answer function rather than into the chat box, just so that we don't miss any of your questions, because it's a little bit difficult to keep track of in there. So feel free to type your questions during the presentation if you like, but we won't be addressing those questions until the presentation has concluded. For your information, today's session is a recorded session. So in follow-up, you'll be receiving from me by the close of business tomorrow. You'll receive a link to be able to view the recorded session, along with some additional information about any of the follow-up, but also the college pathway details as well. So we'll have that in the follow-up going out to you tomorrow. So feel free to listen to the playback or also forward on to any of your colleagues who weren't able to join the session as well. The content of today's presentation is focused specifically on the faculty itself, rather than what we do in the pathway space. So we're not talking about the pathway from the college into the Faculty of Science. As I mentioned, we'll be sending you details of that in the follow-up. So we'll just be focused on the university offerings itself. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Ari and Amanda to take you through the presentation, and I'll be back shortly to help you through the Q&A. Thanks so much to both of you.
Thanks, Stacey. Hi, everyone. It's great to be back. I was just having a scroll through the participant list, and it's nice to see some familiar names. Thanks so much for coming back and joining us again. It's been really, really nice to have you all with us for the last few episodes, and it's just been fantastic having you here. Before we do anything, I do need to embarrass Stacey a little bit by just saying an absolutely incredible and huge thank you to her for all the work that she's done putting this series together. We really, really appreciate it, and it's fantastic to see so many people coming together to support the students. So just a huge thank you. And if you could see Stacey right now, I'm sure she would be blushing a little bit.
That's the reason I don't have my camera on, Ari. No, it is our pleasure. We're so grateful to have access to yourselves, to have the university come along to our sessions. We really do appreciate it. And honestly, all the kudos goes to my team for all the hard work they do promoting the sessions. And working with our agents that have joined us today. And a lot of my team will be on this call, so hopefully they're blushing as much as me. Thanks, Ari. I'll let you continue.
No, all good. It needed to be said. So we are going to talk about our general science programs as well as our new Bachelor of Applied Data Analytics and our Masters of Science suite today. So there's quite a lot to cover. For those of you who haven't joined us before, we'll just do a quick summary of who we are as a university and as a faculty, as well as some of our offerings, and then we'll move specifically into the different degrees. So we'll jump right in. So the University of Adelaide is South Australia's oldest university and the third oldest university in the country. So we're consistently ranked in the top 1% of universities worldwide, and we're a member of the group of 8, which are the 8 leading research universities in Australia. That sounds really good, but what that means for your students is that we have an excellent track record of performance. We do incredible research. Our graduates go on and achieve incredible things. We're associated with 5 Nobel Prize winners and 110 Rhodes Scholars. The research that the University of Adelaide produces can really help shape the world. And so it's a fantastic community of really academically engaged people, and we really do encourage your students to consider studying with us, specifically in sciences though. So 100% of our science research is actually rated at or above world standard. And this is something that's really, really important for your students, because what we do and what we pride ourselves on is making sure that most of the people who are teaching our students are actually still actively contributing to their field. We want our researchers to be teaching our students to give them access to the latest and greatest information. In a field like science, where everything is evolving and developing so rapidly and so quickly, we build our learning and teaching around the idea of developing core skills in problem solving, analytical thinking, and creative thinking. And that will enable our students to be flexible and adaptable to adjust to the ever-evolving STEM space. And having academics who are actively contributing to that future direction is really, really important to us. And it means that our students are getting that direct access to where their field of choice is going. We're also really proud of the relationships we have with industry. Being one of the older universities means that we have some really well-established relationships with our industry partners, to the point where many of our industry partners are actually based on our campuses and operate side by side with our staff and our students. So it gives our students a lot of access to those people and the people who will hopefully potentially employ them at the end of their studies as well. So it's a really, really nice integrated atmosphere that we have at the university across our 3 campuses. That was a really good segue. I'm proud of that one. The Faculty of Sciences is quite unique in that we actually operate across all 3 of the campuses that the university has. In fact, we're the only ones that do. So with the exception of 1 degree, all of our students will start out at the North Terrace campus in the undergraduate degrees in the first year. So if a student has specialised is in a specialised degree that it's offered at Roseworthy for animal and veterinary sciences, or Waite for agriculture, food and wine, they'll actually go out 1 day a week to do their classes there and then move out to those campuses full time from year 2. But the beauty of having everyone come together on the North Terrace campus is that it creates a really strong sense of community. So even when our students split off to different campuses, they still have the friendships and relationships that they've built. The other advantage of having everyone start at North Terrace is that we have a huge range of support services available at that campus. So on the North Terrace campus, we have a drop-in writing centre, maths centre, physics, biology and chemistry support centres. We also have our science service hub, which has a sub office on both of the other campuses. And basically the science service hub is your students' one-stop shop for any questions they may have about their degrees, whether that be about study plans or if they're concerned that they have chosen the wrong courses, if they're a little bit worried about their progress. It's all in one place. It's all there available to them. And we really do encourage them to proactively seek out support while they're doing their enrolment process. We'll move mountains to help them. Our staff create personalised study plans, and we can offer online support for students who are currently unable to make it here as well. So there's plenty of different support opportunities available. Across the campuses, we have a variety of specialist facilities. The one that I wanted to highlight, which we unfortunately don't have a picture of at the moment, is our brand new chemistry labs in the Johnson building. They were only opened this year, and they're designed for first year students who are studying chemistry. We're really, really excited about them. We had them all ready to go, and then we unfortunately had to go into lockdown. So they're still pretty clean at the moment. They're starting to look a little bit more lived in as we've had students start to return back to campus, but they're absolutely incredible and fantastic facilities. Overall, we make sure that we're building as many state-of-the-art facilities as we can that support learning and teaching as well as research. You'll often find at our facilities that we've added a little bit of extra space to some of the rooms for students to observe while staff are working, just to get that bit of extra exposure and experience. So we definitely really want to make sure that our students have that strong experience while they're with us. In terms of our degrees on offer, we've actually already done a session on agriculture, food and wine, a session on animal and veterinary sciences, and another session on biomedical science and biotechnology. Today, we are just going to be focusing on the undergraduate degrees in the sciences section. So that's the Bachelor of Science suite of 4 degrees, as well as the Bachelor of Applied Data Analytics. And then in the postgraduate space, we'll also be looking at the Master of Science, which covers quite a few different areas. So these are all very large degrees and they have a lot of options available within them. So they do need their own session just because of the sheer variety of content in there. With all that out of the way, I will hand over to Amanda to talk about the Bachelor of Science.
Thanks, Ari. Look, I think one of the things with science in particular, and I'd like to reiterate something that Ari said before I delve into the Bachelor of Science in particular, is that research is central part of what we do. And so what that means is that that research teaching nexus is quite important to us. And so the students that come to any of those 3 campuses are not only exposed to wonderful facilities, but they're also exposed to wonderful researchers in the co-located organisations, as well as the people that we have in the University of Adelaide as well. And so I think that that makes us very well placed to make sure that we're giving an education to the students in particularly the science degrees that will make them much more employable. So the critical thinking and the problem solving. So I'm going to talk to the different areas of the sciences, but then also talk through some of the careers that we see where our students go in the future as well. Thanks, Ari. Oh, one back. All right, so first of all, the Bachelor of Science and the Bachelor of Science Advanced. So the Bachelor of Science, I had never actually counted the majors until I looked at this slide the other day. I didn't realise we had 19 majors and double majors, so I knew that we had a lot of stuff going on, but when you count it, there's 19 of them. And one of the things that this allows our students to do is, because we've got so many different areas, and again, it comes back to the different researchers that are available to the students and that interaction that the students have. And what it means is that they can explore their interests a little bit. And it also means that they can find out what their strengths are, and then they can either major, but a lot of students also do double majors as well. So there's a lot of options available to the students. And I think that's a key thing with science, is that there's a lot of options available to the students. But one of the things, regardless of discipline, that the students are engaging with is that we're all about trying to make sure that we're setting them up for the best career possible. And, you know, science is quite important in the context of building critical thinking skills and problem solving, particularly with all of the different issues and challenges, both global and local, that we are faced with in the world today. And the other part of that is, obviously there's no point being a good scientist if you can't actually communicate about the science and change the world with that science. And so the communication aspect is something that we're actually quite strong on as well. One of the ways in which we make sure that what the students are learning is relevant is not just through the academics that research, but also through the industry connections that we have. And so internships are an essential part of that too. And so the other part of this is that while the Bachelor of Science is quite broad in its own right, we're also able to enable students to do a double degree with another degree as well. So, you know, things like the engineering degrees, for example. So there are lots of options available to the students. Now, the Bachelor of Science is, I think, one of our key programs, but in addition to that, we've got the advanced program, and the advanced program is for our high achievers in particular. And what it does is it's essentially the Bachelor of Science, but we've actually added some extra ability to develop research skills for those students. And what they do is they take part in research attachments with academic mentors. So they spend time in the laboratories of academics, not just academics, but sometimes in industry as well. And they undertake a semester-long research project on a real-world problem. So they're actually inserted into a research project of some description, and they actually help in that lab. And that exposure to that time working as a researcher, essentially, in that research project, basically gives them a little bit more of an edge, I would say. So the Bachelor of Science and the Bachelor of Science Advanced have got the same majors within them, and we might have a look at those now, please, Ari. Oh, no, we won't, sorry. We'll actually talk about, so the two programs I've just described are 3-year programs, so the Bachelor of Science and the Bachelor of Science Advanced. This year, what we did was we also introduced some Bachelor of Science honours degrees, which are actually 4-year programs. So they're still just the Bachelor of Science, but we've added on the extra year with honours. So the Bachelor of Science honours and the Bachelor of Science Advanced with honours. So instead of the students being here for 3 years, they're actually here for 4 years. And the honours year allows them to spend even more time in the research laboratory. So it's essentially providing them with an extra pathway. The other thing I would also add is that in terms of the honours year, what it does is, other than building research skills, is it actually builds the independence skills, which is something that employers are always looking for. And so my observation over the years is that students who do honours actually tend to be a lot more employable because of the fact that they've had to develop a research project, they've had to undertake that research project and then communicate and provide detail about that project to industry quite often. So that's just a personal observation over the years that that extra year adds a little bit extra in terms of employability. So we've now got the 4-year program versions as well. Now I'll get to the majors, Ari.
Yeah, actually, I might just jump in for a split second here. Just as a quick reminder, I know many of you have asked questions about this in the past, just as a reminder that the completion of honours at a certain grade level stand will actually give you direct entrance into a PhD program. So you won't have to go master's then PhD. That's something that is a bit unique about Australia. So just to keep that in mind, that if a student goes for this 4-year option or 3+1, if they'd rather do it separately, they can still take that onto a PhD. And now I'm going to be quiet.
Great, thank you, Ari. Let's move on to the majors. So as I mentioned before, there's lots of choice for students, regardless of whether they're doing Bachelor of Science, Advanced. And you can see that we've got 2 new ones there as well, the bioinformatics major and the plant biology major as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to, because it take me forever to explain each of those majors, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to talk through, I guess, the discipline areas, because some of these are actually kind of across particular disciplines. But you can see that we range from biochemistry through to geology, genetics, paleontology, physics, and then we've also got double majors where the students do a particular combination, which we've set for them. However, I'll just point out that that doesn't stop them from, for example, choosing genetics and biochemistry as two majors. So we don't call that a double major, but they can do two majors in their degree as well. So if we could move on to the next slide, please, Ari. In terms of biomedical sciences, so the types of majors here which would prepare a student for a career in the biomedical world are biochemistry. Bioinformatics, so things like looking at the human genome, virus genomes, very topical at the moment, for example. And then we've also got chemistry and the understanding of, for example, the pharmaceuticals that might be required within the biomedical world. And then genetics, understanding how diseases form, how we could actually, I guess, address some of this with things like gene therapy, for example. And then we've got microbiology and immunology, and you know, I think we're certainly getting our fill of immunology at the moment in the news, nearly every day. But as you can see, there are major diseases. We want to be able to create cures for those. We want to also solve the genetics behind what is happening, and then explore also the biology that underlies everything that happens. So any of these majors will help contribute towards that in terms of biomedical science in particular. So it could put the students at the forefront of molecular and biomedical sciences in terms of a career heading in that particular direction. Moving on then to chemistry. So chemistry, we've kind of mentioned that in the biomedical science in the context of pharmaceuticals, but obviously you've also got things like plastics, fuels, and being able to synthesize drug molecules, for example, and then understanding how they might interact with proteins, how they might actually work in the human body, for example. We've also got things like analytical chemistry and understanding the environment around us. So, you know, water chemistry, understanding what's in the waterways, so the environmental side of things as well. So being able to think through some of the big problems, and I mentioned before, you know, we've got global and local challenges. Well, chemistry actually underlies a lot of that. So understanding that chemistry is really important. And so we've got majors which are available in chemistry. We've got a double major in that, as well as the biochemistry, which is obviously much more biologically focused as well. Then moving on to earth sciences. Earth sciences here, this is things like geology, geophysics, and paleontology, or, you know, where were we a couple of million years ago? How did we get to where we are today? You know, understanding about fossils, for example. And, you know, geology is actually quite important in a continent like Australia, because, you know, essentially we've got a very old continent, but we've also got a lot of critical minerals. And as we move forward into the future, those critical minerals, trying to figure out how to actually explore for those is really quite important. So having a career in that is probably something that's going to be really important in the future, as, you know, we have to deal with the planet's growing population in particular. So being able to improve and make sure that we're doing things in a environmentally sustainable manner in the context of earth science, I think, is probably where that's headed. I'd also point out that, you know, we've actually just recently appointed someone we call top talent, research fellow in critical minerals, who, you know, is bringing our world of research in that particular area to the University of Adelaide as well. So nice segue into, we're talking natural resources. Well, environmental sciences is obviously part of that, and being sustainable is really quite important. And the field work that goes with that, and trying to understand the ecology of the systems and the ecosystems that we live and work in, so both local and global ecosystems. So while we've got paleontology, which I mentioned before, alongside of that is also evolution, and we've got evolutionary biology. So how do things evolve to be the way they are today? How did they actually evolve to be able to cope with the changes in the environment. Can we figure any of that out? Can we use any of that in terms of climate change, for example, and dealing with climate change? But also just, you know, recently we've obviously had to deal with the bushfires here in Australia. So, you know, how do we actually address some of those ecological issues that either led to the issues with bushfires or, you know, the aftermath of the bushfires as well. We've also got spatial science, which is, you know, this ability to use geographic information systems and try and work out, using satellite imagery and those types of technologies, you know, what's happening on the ground. This allows us to analyse various environments in particular. And then, you know, we've got soil science, understanding the soil, because if we don't have great soil, then we ain't going to be able to grow great plants, for example, for our crops. And I'm actually a professor in plant science, so of course my favourite major here is plant biology. And so, you know, understanding how plants grow, how they actually cope with the different environments that they find themselves in, is obviously going to be really important as we move into the future and have to feed more people as well. So I mentioned paleontology a couple of times in terms of the majors, and there being double majors with evolution and geology. And as I said before, it's kind of just think anything old. And so one of the key things with our paleo scientists is that we're actually very well placed in terms of the research here in South Australia. So we've got the South Australian Museum. We've also got things like the Centre for Ancient DNA. So, you know, just understanding how did we come to be where we are today, I think is really important. And one of the great things here is that the Student Paleontology Club's actually got 100+ members. So we've got really quite a big group of students who are really interested in, I guess, where we came from, how we got to be where we are today. So we've got a lot of the leading paleoscientists and paleontologists right here in South Australia, which is great. I think the other thing about paleontology is it also allows a lot of field-based work in much the same way that the environmental science majors do as well. In terms of physics, this is a lot more about that detailed understanding at, you know, almost the nano level to some extent when we compare it to paleontology and the environmental science majors. But really this includes things like astrophysics, and atmospheric or environmental physics. And yes, I know that's quite big, but often we're bringing it right down to, you know, smaller than atoms when we're thinking about physics in particular. So if a student is really interested in the structure of matter, then physics majors are quite good for them. We've got experimental physics, so knowing how to actually perform the experiments that tell us about the world around us. But we've also got theoretical physics, which is a little bit more in-depth in terms of trying to understand what's happening as well. So not only do we have the astrophysics and optics and lasers, we've also got things like photonics, nuclear and particle physics, which, you know, obviously are quite important in terms of energy and those types of things into the future as well. So in terms of, that was a very quick run through of all of the different types of areas that our majors cover off on. And as you can see, there's a lot of variation in where the students can go. But I think one of the really important thing here in terms of our career outcomes is I would just like to reinforce or reiterate something that Ari said earlier, which is that, you know, we're about making our students employable. So critical thinking and problem solving are key to those particular, or, you know, the graduate outcomes that we have for our students. And so what that means is that because we do have that flexibility in the Bachelor of Science, our students can end up anywhere. So, you know, they could be defence, they could be working for government in terms of environmental science, hospital and health organisations, particularly if they've followed the biomedical majors. Research is an obvious one, but then, you know, there is also teaching science, communication and journalism, and working for some of the big minerals and energy companies as well. So there's a whole range of different careers that our students end up in. But I think the reason why they end up there is because they're able to solve problems, and to be able to solve those problems innovatively as well.
Thanks, Amanda. So the next degree is our Bachelor of Applied Data Analytics, which is brand new this year. We've just had our first group of students commence with us at the beginning of the year. And it's something that we've been really excited about offering for quite a while now. So as many of you know, data and information is collected on an individual level at a rapid pace. Anytime you interact online, information is being gathered, but it's not just that personal level of data and information. There's huge amounts of data subsets that come from various industries and research. For example, Amanda mentioned earlier, the human genome. That is a very complex data set that requires a lot of work to go through. And so the data skills are going to be a really important and crucial part of our future development. And in fact, data is one of the main pillars of the fourth industrial revolution, or Industry 4.0, and it is going to continue to grow in relevance and significance over the next few years. So it's something that we're really excited to be offering. And we've actually built this degree with employability and industry very much at the heart of our design process. So throughout the degree, there's plenty of opportunities for our students to engage with industry through internships, but we also consulted industry in the design of the degree. The overwhelming piece of feedback we got was that it was fantastic to get students, graduates who have the data analytical skills, the ability to develop models, to be able to use historic information to do future projections, analyze large data sets, but they also needed to have a bit of an understanding of the industry that they were working in as well. So what we've done is we've actually built this degree with a specialization model. So you can see on the screen, there are 7 areas of specialization. Students have to choose a specialization when they come into this degree. But what the specialization does is it contextualizes those data analytics skills within a particular industry. So it's fantastic to have someone come in with the ability to read a huge amount of data and create actionable intelligence and insights, but to have someone who understands that industry means that we've got people who can actually understand how those insights would look in practice. Is this the correct approach? Will this work with what is required from a resourcing perspective? Is there a product that could achieve this at a better rate? That level of insight is really, really crucial, and that's going to help take our graduates to that next level beyond providing a general set of skills. So the study plan itself, we won't actually go through today just because it varies completely based on the specialization. What I will say is that about 50% of the students' time is spent in data analytics, and the other 50% is spent in the specialization. It works out roughly to be around there. And in the final years, the students get to undertake a major research project as well. Something else that is really important is that there are different versions of most of the data subjects based on how much of a mathematical background the students have or how much they're willing to pursue. We call them the more or less quantitative streams. So if a student has a really strong desire and strong interest in mathematics, we'd encourage them to take the more quantitative stream. That opens a lot more doors to them in areas such as machine learning and some of the other areas that are really at the pillars of Industry 4.0. It's not a disadvantage to take the less quantitative stream. That stream focuses more on turning that data into actionable insights and intelligence. So either stream is perfectly fine. It's just based on the students' individual preferences and how much they enjoy working with maths at that higher level. So it's just to keep that in mind. So what I'll do now is I'll walk you through the different specializations. I'll do a bit of a whirlwind approach and give you some insights into some of the careers that could be available and how data is applied in these different areas. So first up is agriculture. Now, as we said in the session a bit earlier on in the year, agriculture is one of the most industries that early adopts technology as quickly as possible. It is technologically advancing so much faster than many other industries. It's a very common misconception to think that agriculture is low tech. And as a result of adopting new technologies, new and greater data sets are being produced, which require a lot more analytical work. As Amanda mentioned earlier, we are in a situation where we have the largest population on the planet than ever before, and feeding that kind of population requires a newer level of efficiency in a variety of different industries, especially in agriculture. We need people to go through and do detailed analytics on the soils, as well as doing comparative analysis of the crop yields in previous years to work out the optimum times, the optimum crops, and the correct amount of resourcing to get the greatest yield with the most realistic amount of time and effort. So it's about really optimizing our production in that industry. In terms of bioinformatics, this is where there's quite a lot of opportunities. There are the more obvious examples, such as tracking the spread of a virus, as well as doing projective models on how the virus could spread, what will happen if we don't intervene, and trying to find those hotspots. But there's also the personalized medicine approach, where you go through and analyze the individual genetic structure of a person and then a larger population to try and work out how we can start tailoring medications to suit the individual, rather than looking at a one-size-fits-all model that has historically been used. And this is something that will tie really nicely into the biotechnology and biomedical fields. We go into a bit more detail about that in the previous session, so if you haven't seen that, definitely worth going into having a bit of a look at that one. Economics, this can be quite a varied field. It can be quite focused and narrow, or also very, very broad. So in the economic space, this could be about the interaction of specific countries. It can be about predicting the impact on a business, all the way down to predicting the impact on a specific community or group of people. So understanding how a pandemic will impact on the economy of a country, and trying to create a predictive algorithm to work out exactly where those pain points are going to be could be the difference between a rapid recovery for a country and a really drawn out recovery. So there's a lot of opportunities in here. In the environment, it is very much about securing and protecting our natural resources and natural world. So understanding the requirements to preserve our natural world, but also to help combat climate change, to help work out the future impacts of varying weather patterns. I don't know if anyone remembers seasons, but they were a thing once upon a time. And so that's something that we need to now work to around, because we have that such variable weather, understanding that sort of information and how that's going to impact on the environment. In the geosciences, this is really about understanding where those mineral resources are, identifying those resources, and not only where they are, but also how much is there, and the viability of going through and doing the initial exploration and extraction work for those resources. So there's huge amounts of geospatial information out there. In fact, the Australian government ran a challenge a few years ago where they released a whole bunch of the data to public sources and offered a cash prize if someone could predict where the newest mineral deposit would be. So it's very much a field where there's a lot of active work in the space. And there's a lot of potential, especially as we start getting the main resource deposits drying up, we need to find new deposits. So there's plenty of opportunities here. Physics is probably the most varied in the data space. There are so many different applications to data analytics skills in physics. The majority will be leaning more towards the research component. There's a huge amount of data required in all elements of physics to be able to prove and inform decisions. And as a result, we need people with those strong data analytics skills. Now, I will also point out that in the physics specialization, some of the subjects do require additional levels of mathematics and physics subject background. You will still be able to do some of the subjects, but certain subjects will be closed off if you don't have a higher level maths or physics background. And I'll cover that again in just a moment, but I just did want to highlight that there. You'll get the full benefit of doing this specialization if you do have a background in physics and those higher level maths subjects. And last but not least is public health. Again, this is quite a broad area. A student in this area could be looking at healthcare claims in particular areas and identify that in this particular region, there's been a really large number of claims in relation to maternity consultations, and then they could look at the timings of that and predict whether or not the hospitals will have capacity to work and to handle the number of cases there. It could also be about looking at the types of ailments that are being reported in particular areas and developing public health campaigns that match those particular regions. So for example, in a suburb that has a very high proportion of alcohol usage, there could be public health campaigns that they use the data to help drive and implement into those particular areas. So the degree itself, that was a lot of information, but the degree itself is quite straightforward. We are looking at 3 years of full-time study with intakes in February and July. We have an IELTS of 6.5 overall with a 6 in each band. And of course, the university has its alternative English language requirements page. If you haven't seen that, I strongly encourage you to visit it. It gives you a little bit of information about the alternative tests that we are currently accepting at this point in time while we're waiting for test centres to reopen. The prerequisites is just a mathematics subject, but again, those physics and higher level maths, which we call specialist maths here, are necessary for some of those physics courses in the first year. So just to keep that in mind. You'll see the link to Degree Finder at the bottom that has the country-specific entry requirements, as well as the University of Adelaide College Foundation Studies program entry score on there. And in terms of careers, I feel like I've covered this fairly well in terms of the different applications, but just to really reiterate that data is very much at the core of the future direction for society. We need to make smarter decisions. We need data to emphasize where opportunities are and to drive the future decision making in a huge variety of industries. As the job market gets more competitive, as industries get more competitive, companies are going to be looking for people who can help them find that edge to make sure that they're moving forward and getting the best possible outcomes. And as well, the scientific discoveries and development are all going to be very heavily driven by data. So this is the perfect time for students to get on board and really develop a highly in-demand skill set that is only going to increase in demand in the coming years. And with that all said, we'll move on to the postgraduate space.
Thanks, Ari. So in terms of the Master of Science, once again, this is a new program and we're quite excited to be able to offer this. And what it does is it actually has 4 specialist areas. So when a student comes into the Master of Science, they decide which of those 4 specialist areas they would like to enrol into. But in particular, I think that what's important with the Master of Science is that it's been structured in a way to allow internship to happen, but also that the research project allows a pathway to PhD. So the students have got a pathway to PhD if they so desire to head in that direction. One of the things that we very deliberately do in the Master of Science is to provide core courses around how you communicate science, what is research and the concepts that underlie research so that they can become stronger researchers. And then we also have the specialisation courses depending upon which specialisation they've chosen. So we've got 4 specialist areas there, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit more detail now. I'd also just add that we've got face-to-face and online coursework available in the Master of Science as well. So there are 4 specialisations, and one of these is earth science, and much in the way that we've already talked about geoscience and geology before, earth science is all about increasing global mineral demand, but we've got declining deposit discovery rates. So that mineral exploration is a key component of what we're talking about here, particularly critical minerals, given the expertise of the academics and industry that sit here in South Australia. So what our students will do is they'll develop a really strong mineral exploration skill set, and in particular they'll know a lot more about novel methodologies, and they'll have really high level skills in collecting, analysing, evaluating quite critically, and also synthesising the data that comes with performing mostly fieldwork, I guess, when we're thinking about mineral exploration. And because they've got that opportunity for industry internship, then, you know, they're going to build those links with industry, and it's going to be quite a valuable real world experience. And I would hope that by the end of a master's specialising in earth science, then all of the graduates, regardless of specialisation, will be well equipped with strong research design, execution and reporting skills. The next of these is grape and wine science. So you can see we've kind of had an industry focus with these specialisations, and grape and wine science is kind of another obvious one here for us here in South Australia and in Adelaide, because we're surrounded by some of the best wine regions in the world. So grape and wine science is about understanding the underlying, how do I actually grow the grape, and then how do I make the best wine from that. So using cutting edge winemaking and viticulture processes. So it would make sure that, I guess, that the interdisciplinary context is in place so that they can think through the grapevine physiology, but also understand the wine chemistry and the sensory science. And one of the things about being here in South Australia, other than the wonderful wine regions that we have around us, is that we have many partner organisations based with us at the Waite campus, and that includes the Australian Wine Research Institute, CSIRO, and also the South Australian Research and Development Institute, all of which have very strong research programs in the area of grape and wine science. So wine is obviously quite important here in South Australia and in terms of economy. So it kind of makes sense to make sure that we have a specialisation in this space as well. The next two that I'm going to talk about are actually kind of linked to each other, because we're going to be talking about international agricultural development and plant breeding innovation. The international agricultural development, for a long time, the Wake campus here at the University of Adelaide has been very well known for its expertise in agriculture and plant breeding. But in terms of using that agriculture to basically aid the world, particularly some of our third world countries, and develop international agriculture to feed the future population, I think this is what is the focus of this specialisation. So we've got the knowledge which is being driven in terms of agriculture, but we need to also just understand how that sits in terms of the cultural, social and political landscapes that agriculture tends to happen within across the world, because we've got, you know, issues around trade and policy and economics as well, which feed into that. And so the international agricultural development is really about trying to make sure that we're applying the skills that the students learn, which are again all of those research skills, high level skills, to be able to make more efficient and better quality agricultural industries, but around the world, and with a very specific international focus in particular. The next specialisation, which is plant breeding innovation, the reason why I say that's kind of linked is because they're both about feeding future populations and about doing it in a sustainable manner. So we've got climate change, we've got lots of population growth. Not only do we want to grow more food, but we want to make sure that that food is the highest quality possible, perhaps the most nutritious possible as well. And one of the things about these two specialisations being mostly located at the Wake campus is that we have access to the state-of-the-art facilities. So we have the plant accelerator, for example, which allows us to measure various aspects of plant growth. We've also got interactions with collaborators overseas, and I'm going to apologise if I don't say this correctly, the Zhaotong University, a joint laboratory for plant science and breeding. So we have a joint appointment with a professor who sits sometimes in Shanghai and sometimes in Adelaide. And so that's actually really quite important for plant breeding. And then also just making sure, I guess the key word here is innovation. So thinking about new techniques, so things like speed breeding, CRISPR-Cas9, transgenics, a whole range of different things are part of plant breeding innovation. So in terms of the actual Master of Science, it is 2 years full time. We have intakes in February and July, and the IELTS is 6.5. We've got the annual fee there, and students need to have a background in science, preferably in terms of a bachelor degree or equivalent as well, to be able to enter into this. Again, much like Ari said with the other degree, you'll find the detailed entry requirements on Degree Finder as well. So the study plan for this is that in the first year, all of the students will undertake either research methodology or becoming smart about data. So making sure that they've got that biometrics statistical background that they require to manage data, but then also how do you communicate science? They can do a sciences internship in their area of their specialisation, and then they can choose electives which are related to their chosen specialisation. And then in the second year, they've got one course which is around research concepts, and then the rest of it is basically a research project and a couple of electives. But the research project is substantial enough that it gives them a pathway to PhD, which was really important to us to make sure that that opportunity was there for these students. So to finalise the information about the Masters of Science, in terms of career outcomes, again, I think these guys are going to be the future, because they're going to be learning the latest techniques. They're going to be the innovative scientific researchers and developers worldwide. And because you've got such a vast array of specialisations, they could end up anywhere. They could be developing crops that are going to grow, dealing with climate change. They could be working on forestry in Tibet, for example, if they were thinking international agricultural development. They could be working about thinking about champagne development in south of France, or they could be thinking about critical mineral development somewhere in the outback of South Australia. So there's lots of different opportunities for these students. Basically, I would say that we're opening up a world of opportunities with these particular opportunities. And of course, they can go on to a PhD afterwards.
Thanks, Amanda. Speaking of careers, just as a little reminder, the Faculty of Sciences has actually produced a podcast called In Their Element, which profiles a set of our graduates and the careers that they've undertaken, what a day in their job looks like, and the decisions that got them to that point. We've actually just released the 6th and final episode for the season, which is about Ruben, who's a graduate from India of the Bachelor of Science Biotechnology, as well as honours. And just about his career journey. It's really, really engaging, really interesting. I strongly encourage you to have a look. There's a lot of information about the sheer variety of careers in science, and to help sort of break down that myth that science is all about laboratory work. It is quite a varied industry. There's plenty of work that barely ever involves stepping foot into a lab. So it's definitely worth having a bit of a listen. And if you've got a student who's interested in any of the degrees that we have profiled, really encourage you to get them to listen to this. It's a really, really interesting session. Stacey will have a link to that in the follow-up email that will be coming out to you in the next day or so. Just as a quick reminder that the University of Adelaide has a huge range of scholarships available. We do encourage you and your students to visit the page and have a bit of a look at the options that are most applicable to your students. Their scholarships have changed in the last few months, so the last year or so. So if you haven't looked in a while, just keep in mind that they have been refreshed. If you've looked already this year, you know what's going on. Just to sort of wrap things up, there are some useful links here. We've covered a huge amount of study areas within the degrees. There's actually a study areas page on the Faculty of Sciences website, which gives you a broad overview of each of those areas. And of course, you'll get a copy of this presentation and recording afterwards too. Degree Finder is your go-to resource for entry requirements. And of course, you can also have a chat through to us too. The last thing I did just want to mention, which I don't have up on here at the moment, is that the university's open day will be on Sunday, the 16th of August. And we will be hosting a virtual open day this year, which means that it is accessible to students anywhere in the world. We really do encourage you and your students to come along. There's going to be a huge amount of information, detailed talks about the various different study areas. We're getting our heads of schools, and Amanda's done a couple as well, to really provide that extra layer of detail and information. So it's definitely worth coming along. The open day platform will be viewable after the event as well. So even if the time difference doesn't work in your favor, you will still be able to go in and access all of the content for a period of time afterwards. Just noting that the staff won't be there all the time, so you won't be able to ask questions live, but you will be able to submit questions. The big thing that I think will really, really help you decide to definitely come along is that we'll actually be showing virtual campus tour videos that the university has produced of the 3 different campuses. So there'll be a Waite video, a Roseworthy video, and then the North Terrace video will be broken down into sections based on the particular study areas that you're interested in. So there'll be science videos, engineering videos, and so on. So it's really, really worthwhile, especially if you haven't had a chance to come visit us in person before. Definitely worth having a look. They're really great videos. They show a huge variety of our facilities. And it just really highlights the unique location of the university in the city and our fantastic blend of the sort of heritage listed sandstone buildings with state-of-the-art modern facilities. And also Jess, who hosts it, is just really nice and very friendly. So it's good fun. I'm going to hand back over to Stacey now. Thank you all so much for your time.
Great. Thank you so much, Ari and Amanda, for that great presentation. So much information today. So hopefully everyone's able to absorb all of that, but it's been broken down in a really clear way for everybody to follow. So hopefully that's useful for you when you're counselling our future students. And Open Day is certainly a great opportunity for the students to come in a virtual capacity and have a look around, as Ari said. I can see one question's just come through on the chat just asking what time the open day is, but I'll pop some information in the follow-up email about open day for everybody's reference as well. So looking forward to logging on myself and having a little nose around. So with that, we can jump into the Q&A. We just had one question pop in now. So if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A function rather than into the chat box so that we can keep track of those. So just the first question here. Okay, so we've got an anonymous question. So if the student is online, the student have to pay for OSHC during the acceptance of the offer. Okay, this question is not related at all to Faculty of Science. The OSHC or the policy information I can put in the follow-up email. We'll just keep the questions really specific to our special guest speakers today. So I'll follow up on that one in the email. Thank you. And then from Jeff, for the degree transfer program, students who are studying science subjects, how would they get through physics or chemistry experiments during the remote study? So Ari and Amanda, this was written specifically for degree transfer, so for college students, but perhaps you'd like to answer that more on a broad level for the university students.
Sure. So at the moment, obviously, we've got lectures online. We do have face-to-face practicals, but we also have deferred practicals for a number of our courses. And so what that means is that when a student is able to come onshore, then they're able to complete those practicals at that time. So at the moment, the university has a grade called results pending, and we're using that grade to its full advantage at the moment. As well as that, we're also using prerequisite waivers to not slow down progression of students as well, where a student doesn't necessarily need the practical to go on to their next course, but they need to complete that practical to complete the course, if that makes sense.
Okay, great, thank you. And then from Maria, for Bachelor of Science, when can the student choose his or her major or minor? So I'm assuming they're wondering whether the student needs to determine their path, I guess, from the outset at the point of application, or is there some flexibility there?
There's a lot of flexibility, and actually I would encourage students in their first year to explore a little bit and discover, because quite often they don't know what they don't know, as in they don't know what they actually do like until they actually have the opportunity to do something. So sometimes students will be very focused right from the first year, and they'll go, I'm going to do a physics major, and they're just going to pick all of the appropriate courses. But in a lot of cases, most of the students don't actually have too much of an idea, so they'll pick and choose a little bit of what they think they're interested in. But then in second year is probably where you really do need to start doing that. In second year, second semester, we have a program which actually gets students to make sure, first year, second semester, which actually gets students to go, okay, I'm going to need some things in second year to be able to complete the courses in third year to give me my major. And so they do need to start thinking about it quite seriously at the end of first year if they haven't already thought about it.
So with degrees like Applied Data Analytics and the Master of Science, the area of specialisation does need to be chosen at the front end. So for the Master of Science, you're applying directly to the specialisation. For Applied Data Analytics, for international students, there's one parent code, and then you need to choose your specialisation at the time of enrolment. You can chop and change with some of these, but the further you go in, the harder it is, and the more time it's going to be required to make up courses, because while the data courses in data analytics are the same, the specializations are so wildly different from each other, you basically have to go back and repeat them. So with that degree in particular, we really encourage students to do their research, do their homework, ask us questions, and help them identify exactly what they want to do before they come in. And of course, if they change their mind, we'll absolutely help them and help them work it all out. But having a clearer idea from the beginning is very, very beneficial. But as Amanda said, in the Bachelor of Science and other degrees, it's a lot more flexible. My one piece of advice to students is always, it's just as important to find out what you like as it is what you don't like. Often figuring out what you don't enjoy can be just as valuable. When I first started at university, I realized very quickly there were a few subject areas that I just did not enjoy at all, and that actually helped inform all of my future choices from there. So it's definitely something to consider.
Great, thanks, Ari. Thanks, Amanda. And I assume also that attending something like Open Day, but also joining or listening to the podcast would be a great way for some of the students to help form up those views as well. So then I've got two questions here from the same attendee in regards to job opportunities for students that study sciences. Now, I feel like we've gone into this with a fair bit of detail already. Ari, is there anything that you wanted to add there? Or I think probably...
Yeah, just as a very general comment, the core set of skills that a student develops in a science degree means that they're actually quite transferable into other industries. So that critical thinking, problem solving, the creative thinking, it's all relevant to a lot of different areas. Many of our science graduates will work in industries outside of science. For example, physics graduates actually make very good bankers. Because of the sheer level of mathematical skill and their problem solving capabilities, a lot of our physics grads end up working in banking. So there are plenty of industries available based on those core transferable skills and the knowledge and skills developed in specific science subjects. That it means that graduates aren't pigeonholed just into working one particular area.
Great, thanks, Hari. And then from Vivian, so for applied data analytics, does the student need to have any prerequisites? So for example, the major in health sciences, does the student need to have chemistry in year 12?
Yeah, so the health major is actually public health, so it's more about people and populations rather than the specific anatomy and physiology. The degree itself just has a mathematics prerequisite, and the only other area that requires additional subjects is for some of the courses within the physics specialization requiring a higher level maths and physics. All of the others, it's more based on just that math subject. We definitely would encourage students to pursue related subject areas. So in ag, a bit of a background in chemistry wouldn't go astray. Same with bioinformatics, but it's not a formal requirement of admission. It's more us just giving you recommended subjects that will make your first year a little bit more straightforward.
Great, thank you. And then an anonymous question here. An interesting one. How would you describe the difference between the data science program and information technology?
Yeah, no worries. So data analytics is all about processing large amounts of information and turning it into actionable and usable, whether insights, intelligence, and so on. Whereas information technology is much more focused on the broader concepts of IT. I have to admit that's not a program that sits within our faculty, and I don't want to accidentally misrepresent it, but they are very, very different from each other. We are very much focused on turning that data into something useful within the context of a particular industry, whereas IT has a lot more broader skills in computer science, computing. There's still some data science involved in those programs, but this is explicitly focused on data.
Great, that's great. Thanks, Ari. And then the last question that I've got here at the moment, so please, if anyone has any other questions, we are running a little short on time, so just pop any last questions in while we address this one. So this question is, what will be the criteria for students wanting to get admission directly into a PhD?
Yeah, so it does depend on which pathway they're coming through. So if they're coming, say, for example, the Bachelor of Science with honours or Advanced with honours, in that honours qualification, you need to achieve a grade of first class honours or second class A to be able to go straight into a PhD program. From there, if you don't achieve those grades, we would typically get you to go through a master's program that has a substantial research component. It doesn't need to just be a master's by research. It could be a standard coursework master's like the Master of Science, which has a significant enough research element. And then based on your performance in that research, you would then be able to access a PhD program. So it's a couple of different options, but yeah, generally the top 2 grades in honours will lead directly into a PhD program.
Great, thanks, Hari. So I'll just give everyone just the last couple of minutes if you did have any last questions. Otherwise, we will wrap it up there. So just wanted to, again, to say a huge thank you to Ari and Amanda for your time today. It's been really great to hear about those new programs. I know as particularly the data analytics, oh my goodness, I can't speak. It's in high demand in a number of our key markets. So I'm excited to see what numbers we might start to see rolling in. And I've taken note of all of our participants today to follow up with you all to see if you've got any applications for those new programs. So thank you again to you both for your time. To our attendees, as I mentioned, we're so grateful for you to continue to take time out of your day to join our webinars. It's been really great to have you with us. I would really love and appreciate to hear from all of you any feedback that you have at all about our webinars, whether that feedback is that you can hear the dog next door to my house barking right now, or whether it's in relation to what you would like to hear from us next. I would really love to hear that from you. As I mentioned at the start, this is the last in our planned series focused on sciences and health and medical sciences with the University of Adelaide. We've got a few things up our sleeve in terms of what we would like to do next for you. But as I mentioned, I'd love to hear that from you as far as what you'd like to see in our webinars, what sort of format, what sort of content, subject matter, etc. So please get in touch. I might, if I get organized enough, might pop a little survey monkey link in the follow-up, but if you get some time to send me some follow-up, I'd really, some feedback, I'd really appreciate that. So no other questions have come in during my last little spiel there. So without further ado, we'll wrap up our 5-part series. Thank you so much to the Faculty of Science for all of your time, everyone that's contributed to it. So Ari, Amanda, Simon, of course, and Nicole, who's been in the background here helping me to plan all of these as well. So thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and we'll speak with you again soon. Thanks Ari, thanks Amanda.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.